All right. Welcome back to Always Moving Forward. Today we have Angelo I'll make sure I don't butcher your name.
Maldonado.
Maldonado. Okay. I just want to make sure that I don't butcher your name. So, Angelo is a actor
Yes, sir.
that I came across on Facebook. So we're going to get to learn a little bit more about him. I know that he's in Danny's House, and then you also did was it Prank It on MTV?
Yeah, Revenge Prank on MTV. Correct.
Revenge Prank. Okay.
Yeah, those are a couple of things I've done.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I see that you have a list of different films that you've done as well.
Yes.
So we'll talk about those. So why don't you go ahead and let's talk about your early years. This is how we normally start the show, is we'll talk about the early years of you growing up and where you were born and raised, and tell us a little bit about your childhood.
For sure. I'm going to pull over here, and I'm taking my kids actually my wife and daughter to get something to eat. My mom's out there, so apologize. I'm multitasking here.
That's not a problem at all.
Yeah, so I just parked now. Well, first and foremost, I appreciate the opportunity to be on your platform and share my story. I'm very grateful for that. I believe it's going to keep growing. You have a very kind heart. You can tell that you're a good soul, and so
right.
I'm not the type of person that that is an opportunist. I don't take advantage or try to look for people who have hundreds of thousands. I could care less. I'm all about energy. I'm all about personality. So I agreed to do this, because I really just respected. And it's funny because you actually interviewed a friend of mine, Stedman.
Yeah,
and
we just did.
Stedman's a friend of mine for many years, and very talented man, and a great father and a great person. So, just to get back to your question, I'm Hispanic. I guess nowadays, people adapted the Latinx terminology. I don't really use that too much. I'm just a Puerto Rican Latino.
Right.
47 years old. I'm not a spring chicken. Born and raised in Brooklyn, New York City. Both my mother and father, were born in Brooklyn. They were not born in Puerto Rico. But even if they were, it's still United States. So it's like, what I mean? So, so that's always one of those little weird ones. You know what I mean? Like, you can't say, how do you say you're Puerto Rican? And technically it's we're all, one, if you will.
Right.
So, with that being said, the biggest struggle for me was the fact that, we grew up poor. We have, a very standard story for a lot of minorities or just people in general. I don't think it's, just locked, contained to just, or locked into just the minorities. Everyone, right, regardless of color or race, we all struggle,
Right.
But in my case, it was tough because my dad was a Marine. And at the time, we didn't realize he had mental health issues. We didn't know. It wasn't something talked about back then.
Right.
More or less in a Latino or Latinx household.
Right.
So my childhood grew up with him not being around and just seeing a lot of physical abuse. But the type of abuse that a kid, being the eldest,
right,
really should not have seen. And I think so. My childhood grew up very traumatic, and I'll just kind of start with that. We can always get into other things.
Okay. So how old were you while your dad was away?
Well, my dad left when I was I'd say about 7. So 7. he was in and out of the house, but I'd say about 6 or 7. Around that time, I remember one day he had come to the house, and it was at a wedding. I was the ring bearer at the time, and he came in and he was drunk, and he almost killed my mother right in front of me. So from that point on, I started to take to food. Food was kind of my drug of choice, for lack of better words. And and even now, I still wrestle whenever I'm stressed or whenever I'm overthinking or just, anxious or whatever. Drug was always my drug of choice. Food was always my drug of choice, for lack of
Right.
better words. So he
Right.
was never around. And then, I wound up getting a stepfather. My mom, she remarried later on, and he didn't have mental health issues that was officially diagnosed. I do believe he has bipolar disease as well. I've
Right.
studied a lot about it, and he has, all the check marks. Um,
Yeah.
but he wasn't any better. He didn't hit my mother, so I was grateful for that.
Yeah.
If he did,
Right.
he probably wouldn't be alive. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm just
Right.
being honest
Right.
with you,
Yeah.
because I was older at that, a little bit older, and I was like, but he was abusive towards me and my little brother Paul, who was 3 years
Well.
younger than I. So he's 40, he's 44 now. But so it
Right.
was like we had that situation, but then the physical abuse we would get from my stepfather, because Dominican man, English was horrible. Um, you know, he married this woman that had 2 kids, and
Right.
and we had a lot of stuff going on, and he wasn't prepared for that. You know.
Right. So, as a kid, I mean, how did you adapt and try to overcome that?
I think for me, being introduced to God at such a young age,
Mm-hmm.
around 8 years old, I started going to a church, and at the time, the church called Christian Heritage Church, and it's
Okay.
the pastor was pastors Joseph and Joyce Matera. Joyce
Right.
Matera actually is that. He's an author now, award-winning author. Um, Joyce actually runs an organization, globally known. It's called Children of the City. I believe it
Okay.
is, right? Children of the City. And so, I was actually one of their first, children. They would pick up a
Well.
bunch of, inner city kids in the van, and they would take them to
Mhm.
church. And so, um, I was introduced to that. So that was kind of that kind of filled some of the potholes emotionally.
Right.
Things that I wasn't able to get from mom, things I wasn't able to get from dad. The church was that family that you know
Right.
that kind of helped me come together, and then eventually I accepted God, the Lord in my life, and so that was kind of the crutch, to answer your
Okay.
question.
So now you didn't grow up in a Christian home, right? I mean, that
Uh,
wasn't.
yeah, my mother believed in God, but she never,
Mhm.
was very. I hate to use the word religious, but she
Right.
wasn't much into church. She didn't go to church or anything of that nature. My dad, wasn't obviously going. Stepfather wasn't much of a. I was like the only one in my house going to church.
Right.
And it was
So
crazy.
so let me ask you. So what kind of drew you to that? I mean, like if a
My
lot of
aunt,
kids, Oh, your aunt. Okay.
yeah, my aunt Elaine was a Christian. She was the one that was introduced to Christ at a young age,
Okay.
and so she was mentored by Joyce and Joseph Matera.
Okay.
And they still have a church now. It's called Resurrection Church in Sunset Park, Brooklyn. So they still have a church there. I will always be indebted to them. They changed my life. Um, but yeah, so my aunt, brought me to a church which was initially it was called Calvary Church in Staten Island. So, to
Hmm.
make a long story short, they branched off, Joyce and Joe, and planted their own church in Brooklyn. And my aunt followed them, and she obviously brought me, because I was her first
Right.
nephew and first child on both ends and things of that nature. And so, yeah, so it was one of those type of situations where, you know, um, I was naturally introduced, and I fell in love with it. I'm not gonna lie to you, I
Well,
fell in love with it.
right.
Yeah.
Okay. And then so now when you went from there, where did you start finding your passion and your purpose? I mean, coming from a childhood where you experienced abuse, how did that kind of transform into you finding your purpose?
It's a great question. They're getting out the car, so I apologize. It's all live, okay. Everybody. Everybody watching, we're live.
It's all right.
So, what? As I was really young, I would say about maybe 9 years old, 8, 9. I started noticing that I was being told that I could sing really well. I would hear the family tell me, "Hey, you can sing really well. You're amazing. You're great." Wow. And again, I'm young, and I didn't really pay attention. I was like, just okay, great, whatever. I'm looking around like, all right, whatever. But then they would, my mom and other relatives would have me. I'm like this walking American Idol, contestant. So they have me running around just singing, and then as I got older, I realized like, oh, hold on a second, like I actually have a gift. And so I was able to sing, and so I started to harness it, practice it, sing all the time, and sang at church, and would, sing in the corners, hanging out with my buddies as I became a teen. Then I became this neighborhood guy where everybody would kind of, just kind of lift me up and just, like we would say, years ago, they would gas me up, for lack of better words, and man, you're great, you're good at what you did. But I realized, like, hold on, no, they actually do like, they like what I do. And so then from when I realized I had a gift, growing up in Brooklyn, New York City in that era, the hip hop era, hip hop is hip hop. It's one of the biggest, if not the biggest, genre of music in the world. I said, you know what, man, I love rap. I'm into hip hop. How can I incorporate? And so I started practicing rapping, and then by the time I started making songs. I was the first male hip hop and R&B artist ever. You know what I mean? Ever. I was the first person ever to do it, and it was validated because I performed on a nationally syndicated show, the Carson Daly Show, with Wyclef Jean, Grammy-nominated artist. I was on the show in 2004. Like I went in just to be in the audience, and
is this when Carson? I don't mean to
go for
interrupt you. Is this when Carson Daly was with MTV at the time?
No, this is actually after he started his own show in New York City. I mean, he eventually transitioned to like LA with his show. Yeah, this is some of the younger folk who are watching. May know Carson Daly from I think it's The Voice or whatever it is, and many people know him as the host of The Voice. But he was in MTV initially, and then he started his own show. So the guest that night was Wyclef Jean. You know what I mean, from the Fugees. And so for those who don't know Wyclef, he's from the Fugees, Lauryn Hill. We discovered Lauryn Hill, multi-Grammy. And so my goal was to hit him off with a demo. I'm going to give him the CD. And then lo and behold, he's asking people, hey, anybody know how to rap in the crowd? So he's kind of warming up the crowd before the show starts. So I'm waving my hand like a kid that knows the answer in the classroom, right? So like, I'm like, hey, and he, lo and behold, he picked me. I went up there. It was a live band, and man, I was in the zone. I went there to rock and roll. Well, actually, rap and sing. But let me clear that up. And yeah, man. And then when the show actually started, and it was his time to perform, and this was on the actual show, he pulls me back on stage. I was able to perform with him live on stage, and it was equally as good. I mean, the crowd was going crazy. It was just a beautiful moment. A day later, I get invited to his studio, which is Platinum Sound Studio in New York City. Him and his relative Jerry Wonder. Well, he's his bass player as well, partner. And then he offers me a production contract. He says, "Hey, man, I want to give you a shot. You're ridiculously talented. You're Hispanic. There's nobody out there that's male. That Lauryn Hill could rap and sing, but she wasn't from the streets like I was. She wasn't Hispanic. She wasn't a male. So I was like, I kind of broke the ice for rappers and singers. You know what I mean?
Wow. So that's pretty cool. So like when they saw that started, he had you come up. That was just like a warm up period before the show actually started. Like
it started with that.
Working the crowd.
Yeah. And then when you seen everyone go crazy, that's when he pulled me up later, in the show, because it was Anthony Anderson, comedian
Right.
and actor Anthony
Well,
Anderson, was on the show as well that day. I remember, and
oh wow.
yeah, so he pulled me up during his live set, because the show was live, and so
Right.
he pulled me up during his live set that was actually aired on the show, Wyclef, and then he pulled me on, and because he knew already that I had what it took, and so
Right.
he allowed me that platform, and it was pretty cool.
Okay, that's cool, man. So I mean, what was that like? I mean, you're sitting in the audience, was it like you wasn't planning him to bring you up? He
Oh,
just,
not at all, not at all.
yeah.
I was
So
shocked.
now you, yeah. So now you're sitting there. He brings you up, and in from the the audience, you get to perform, which is incredible. I mean, it's like,
Dream.
and, yeah. So what, to me, explain to me what that was like for you to be able to go up there and do that, and then the kind of the whirlwind that came along with that.
I think for me it was, it was a moment where I had, it was do or die. Like that
Right.
was the mindset. Like, hey, I've been working hard for a moment like this.
Right.
I got it. Now either I choke and
Right.
screw this up, or I just kill it. You know what I
Right.
mean? And go out there and really leave an impression. So I was in the zone, and I just
Right.
went in there. So just having that, the reaction from the crowd, reaction from Carson Daly, reaction from, it was life changing. And when Wyclef offered me that production deal and all of this happened, it was life changing, because it was me proving to all of the naysayers, the doubters. I mean, I've
Right.
had relatives, even my own uncle, David on my father's side, I remember one day when I was talking to him about music, and I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna make it one day, and and he just
Right.
stopped. He pulls the car over, and he gets in
Wow.
my face, and he says, you know what? It's not gonna happen for people like us. It's
Wow.
not gonna happen. It doesn't happen for people like us. Referring to like Latinos and minorities, But I
Right.
didn't realize at that time, because I think I was about 16, that he was really just kind of putting on me his failures, because he attempted to be a guitarist and singer, and
Oh
he
wow.
failed because
Yeah.
he didn't. He just wasn't. I mean, just going to be honest with you, he sucked. You know what I mean? He
Right.
wasn't. He
Right.
wasn't.
Yeah.
It wasn't his calling. He wanted to carry on my grandfather's legacy, because my grandfather was famous. In the 50s, he was in the famous groups, and he sang, and he did Spanish music, and he was a guitarist and singer. So he wanted to carry on my grandfather's legacy. Couldn't, failed, and then he
Right.
wanted to knock my dreams. And that was the most devastating. Because remember, I told you, my dad wasn't around. So
Right.
my uncle Dave was that father figure, right? He was that father
Right.
figure. He'd take us to all the fancy places. He had the money. He was the Puerto Rican that thought he was Italian. And so he'd always take us to all these fancy Italian restaurants. And,
Right.
and if you're from Brooklyn, there was so many different places we go to, like L&B's, and we'd go to, Brennan and Cars, and all these other, really institutions. But it was devastating, for me to hear that from him. So it was like validation mentally and emotionally,
Right.
like, you know what, I'm gonna prove to everybody. So the gasoline that got my car running was the fact that I finally got offered this production
Right.
deal that ultimately, if it had went through, it would have changed my life.
Right. And that kind of, there's two things that I'm thinking about right now is the first thing, and we've mentioned this before, is, people who are looking for their purpose or their talent, most of the time they're already doing it. Like you said, you found your calling singing long before that actually happened. So you were taking, all the steps needed to prepare you for that moment that God had for you.
Right.
You are preparing for that, and then just out of nowhere, you get this opportunity. So, that's one thing that I try to stress with my audience is that people who are searching for their purpose, most of the time, you're already doing it. You're created to do, to be or do something, and most of the time you're already doing it. You just don't realize it.
You're right, and I think the hardest part, and I think a thing that is really, I mean, it's discussed, but it's not really harped upon as much as it should be, or is the lack of support for those who are in the arts, for those who are chasing after this passion, this goal, this dream, especially when it pertains to music or acting. You go into a house and say, "Hey, I want to be a singer. I want to be a rapper. I want to be an actor." And, it's like a fairy tale to a lot of people who I don't like to say simple-minded because I think it's offensive, but people who are have maybe given up on their dreams, people who may have had talent but just never really believed in themselves, people who've lacked, just the wherewithal to say, you know what, I'm just going to go and do this. I was like, nah, man, the heck with that. I'm going all out. But the problem with me was then you mix that in, me being heavy set, me not having the support of a father. Church was there, yes, but it was there for a very, short stint where it'd be the Saturday, they pick me up on Saturdays, and then I have the whole week of me having to marinate all these thoughts and things of that nature. Right. But I think for me, it was like I was always giving my all to the music and everything, but I didn't have no support. It was nothing. They would tell me that I could sing, but that was it. It was nothing. So I started to go to New York City and go to all the open mics. I started to say, you know what, I have to put myself out there. So as 17 creeped up, 18, 19, 20, I'm like, man, I'm in New York City 24/7. Every open mic. There's one called EOW, which was called End of the Week. They're still running. They're the longest running open mic hip hop platform in the world. I mean, they're the longest running in the world. It's called EOW, End of the Week. These individuals, were giving people platforms, unknown individuals. And so it was just a matter of me going everywhere and just making sure people knew who I was.
Right. And, and that's another thing too is, that's why it's so important to surround yourself with the right people, because you do have a lot of those people out there who, have their own shattered dreams, and they have, I don't like to say failure, because, it's not failure that when you try something and you don't succeed. To me, that's not failure. Failure is when you've given up, period.
Correct.
When you quit, then that's a failure. But you have those people who have quit. Like your uncle. Maybe he wasn't good at, singing or whatever, but there's something else he could have done and been successful at. But he quit. And then he tried to put that on you. And I think that happens more often, than not, that, that people do that to discourage other people because they didn't make it. When he did that, when he, got up in your face and, showed you things like that don't happen to you, what kept you from letting that crush you and crush your dream?
Well, because, I looked at him as a father figure. Right. I really looked up to him. I idolized him. Right. He was he made a ton of money. He had his own carpet business. Everyone else in my family was broke, and he was that one relative that had all the money, would take me on boats and Sheepshead Bay, in Brooklyn. Again, this is all for people who, if you don't know of any of these locations or things, please Google them. You'll appreciate it afterwards. Going on boats, and again, it was just, he showed, sitting in his Corvette when I was a lot skinnier, but, just driving around and drop top, in a convertible Corvette. And it, it was just a dream of like, man, I want to be like Uncle Dave, and so when I was with him, it was this left field, like, wow, like I can't believe my idol, my second father, if you will, the
Right.
guy that attempted to take the place of my dad and try to kind of take us out and do things. Like, I looked up to this man, and I really, really, like, if he told me do this would change my life, I'd do it. Like, we said,
Right.
go there and punch this guy in the face, I'd punch him. Like, I was like, his lackey. Like, I was that guy that just, whatever he
Right.
said was God. Like, was the Bible. Like, so when he said it to me, it was crushing because of the way I revered him and the way I put him on a pedestal. You know.
Right. So how was you able to overcome that? I mean, and not let that affect you and push you to keep moving forward.
Well, it to this day, it's still something that I'm still, dealing with. I do go to therapy,
Right.
counseling, and stuff. There's certain things that I think that, we try to say that we've overcome, or that, we've gotten past. But I think there's a lot of traumatic experiences that don't necessarily have to be physical, or losses, but sometimes words really cut really deep.
Right.
And some, yeah, you may heal up, but the scar is still there, and every time you look at that
Right.
scar, it reminds you of that moment.
Right.
And I think that that's something that people don't realize. Okay, it may have healed up, but every time you look at it, you're reminded of it. And so
Right.
for me, you know anytime I'd fail, I would always revert back to that. So what got me going and made me pursue it and just go all out and say, you know what, I'm just going to do this, was the desire to prove everybody wrong, that I really knew what I was talking about, and that I was going to be the first. And so
Right.
for me to come from nothing, again, I was sexually abused at 8 years old as well.
Oh,
So
wow.
I dealt with that, which was traumatic. I never told anyone until I was in my late 20s. I told my mom when I was 29 because I was embarrassed. It was by another
Right.
male. So
Wow.
I was dealing with that. I was dealing with, all of these traumatic things. And I said, you know what? I'm using it as fuel. I
Right.
had God and the prayer, which kind of was the glue. And
Right.
and then I just I had all of the doubters and people who didn't believe, and I said, you know what, I'm gonna prove to everyone. But that
Right.
wasn't, like, I realized later in life that was the wrong ammunition. You know what I mean? That was the wrong
Right.
gasoline to put in, because there was water in the gas. You know what I mean? And that
Right. Right.
eventually will destroy your engine. So when I realized that later on, I said, man, I wasted so many years. And I think a lot of people too that may be watching say, you know what, I'm gonna do this so I can show them.
Right.
You know what? Yeah, they hated on me, or yeah, they didn't support me. Well, I'm gonna prove to them that. And I think that is not the way to go. Not that I think, I know it's not the way to go. And if I can
Right.
encourage anybody, if you love something, if you're passionate, but even more so, if you know that you're called to do something, you do it because of your passion, your love for it, and your calling,
Right.
regardless of who supports you. And so that's what kept me going and made me go all out, because eventually there were moments where I would say, you know what, man, like, this is my calling, man. I'm good at
Right.
this. You know
Right.
what I mean? Yeah, every once in a
Yep.
while I'll flip flop, and I get into, maybe I get emotional and I'm like, man, I'm going to show them. But there was a good 50-50 of me, kind of, it was a good and evil side, like, I'm going to prove to them. But then it was a part of me like, no, like this is my calling, you know?
Right.
So it was tough. I mean, like I said, it wasn't easy, but it was something that I recognized later in life, that, again, when you do things with the motive of, I'm going to prove to them, I'll show them,
Right.
you're doing it for all the wrong reasons. Because then when you do get it, right? Say
Right.
you get everything you dreamed of, and you driving the cars and you're putting all these pictures and you're doing everything you can to show off and to brag and just rub it in their faces, for lack of better words.
Right.
Then what?
Exactly. Yeah.
What are the rewards after that? Is
Right.
that going to sustain you for the rest of your life? Again, you'll be able to eat everything you wanted to eat and travel wherever and do all the things but if your whole existence was like, I'm going to show them what happens after you show them.
Right. Well, and I think you brought up a good point because, the way I look at it is your purpose is to serve other people. That's that. Whatever you do, you could be a photographer, you could be an actor, you could be a singer. It doesn't matter what you do. Your purpose is to serve other people. When you get into the mind frame that you're going to use your talent to prove other people wrong, then you start making it about yourself. Then you're not, then your purpose, you're distorting what your purpose actually is, because now you're making it about yourself. You're making it that I'm going to prove people wrong. I'm going to show them this is what instead of using your talents and your purpose for what God gave it to you for, and that's to actually give you platforms and the ability to be able to share your story
100%.
and serve. But the idea that you're an actor and singer, that gives you the ability to put you in a platform where you can actually take your actual story and share it with somebody. It just gives you that vehicle to do so, and that's pretty much what your talent is. Just anybody. Regardless if you're an author, you're photographer, whatever you do, that's your platform to be able to share your story of what God did for you. You came from such a rough background, and God's brought you out of that. Now He's giving you the ability with your talent to be able to be on a platform that you can share that story. Because the story, your journey is a powerful journey, and it's inspiring. And I think that this gives you that platform to be able to share that with more people.
And I appreciate you sharing that. And I think and forgive the noise because my wife and the daughter's coming back in the car. Again, guys, we're live here. So I realize that I think we all have a story to tell, right? No matter how how traumatic, how easygoing it may be, there is something that needs to be shared. God, I believe God created us all and allowed us all to go through certain things in order for us to be able to allow Him, again, it's only if we allow Him to use it and turn it around and say, okay, well, this happened to me. And it kind of sucks, you know what I mean? But how can I turn this around and use it to help other people? How can I use what I have and say, okay, well, I can't control this. I couldn't control what happened before. I went through this. I went through that. We all have our war stories. Right. But it's like, I had to come to a point where I'm like, God, what was I supposed to learn from these things? So, when my dad, and I'll fast forward in 2017, my father took his life, right? Dad was 60 years old. My dad was an actor. He was a Marine. And as I mentioned, he had moved to Florida, he in 1993. So, he was up there for a while. And I remember, I had found out he had mental illness 10 years ago. I'm 47. Wow.
Right.
I'm 47. I found out at 37 that my dad had all these issues mentally. Right.
Wow.
So for me, I had to realize, because the music thing didn't work out. And I know I kind of jumped to my dad, but I'll just really briefly, to give some context. The music thing didn't work out because Wyclef told me in 2005, he said to me, we don't know how to move forward with you because it's hard to market you. Right. Basically saying that I'm heavy set. At that time, I was 550 pounds. So I became suicidal. It was really tough, So for me, thinking about, man, I put all this effort into this. I did all I could to be into this music industry, and this is my passion. And then to have someone tell me, hey, because you're not marketable, we can't move forward with you. And I think it's really, because I want to backtrack, because I kind of jumped ahead of myself. I apologize. But
That's right.
when Wyclef mentioned that to me, it was devastating, because again, it was that instantly what hit me was what my uncle had told me.
Right.
It won't happen for us. So then I'm
Right.
like, man, you know what I mean? Just when I thought, because imagine how mentally and emotionally devastating it is, where here's a guy that you know in your heart and soul would understand hip hop and R&B.
Right.
I mean, why Clef Jean? I mean, the man who discovered Lauryn Hill. If
Right.
anybody's gonna understand somebody's ability to rap and sing, that man would. And so for
Right.
him to tell me that, it was so triggering that months later I attempted suicide.
Wow.
I attempted suicide because I was so, all my eggs were in this basket. This man said that I am giving you a production contract. I'm going to change your life. And I said to myself, wow, like I felt vindicated. I felt emotional. I was excited. I'm like, man, I could take my mom out of this roach infested, with mice infested apartment in
Right.
Brooklyn. All of those variables, right? And then to hear him tell me that, I said, man, so this is why when you don't deal with certain things, and how mental health, especially being, this is Mental Health Awareness Month, for
Right.
those who don't
Right.
know, it is so important for people to understand the significance of mental health and how it was undiagnosed. Like even with this young man that that obviously was killed in Texas, that when they shot all those those poor children and the teachers, may they all
Right.
may God rest their souls, and my prayers, my sincerest prayers go out to all of those who lost someone. But I also
Right.
pray for those who are traumatized, who have kids that are sending them to school, that got to deal with that. And even the kids that are traumatized and scared to go to school because they're wondering, is this going to happen to me? And so,
Right.
for mental health, there's so much that's going on. And I realized that, with me, like if I had the help, if I had the support from a mental health aspect, the spiritual, again,
Right.
the spiritual end was there. But a lot of churches don't tackle mental health. A lot of churches are ill-equipped to help people who struggle with mental health. They just pray
Right.
it away, rebuke it, just cast it out, it's a demon, and they get
Right.
real religious about it. And
Right.
I'm not saying all. I'm just saying probably 95% of them are not
Right.
equipped to deal with people. And I know it's a high number, but it's from my experiences and my research, it's a proven fact. Maybe even more.
I agree with that. I think that the church needs to, a lot of the church looks at an individual and they're looking for people who look a certain way or act a certain way, and they tend to shun people that I guess they don't understand or don't know how to communicate with, like people with mental illnesses. And that's something that I agree the church needs to be more involved in, and find a way to be able to communicate and help those individuals.
I think for me, if I had that, even in the church at the time, if I had that support, and was able to process that letdown, you know what I mean,
Right.
that emotional blow, that traumatizing experience, I would have been better equipped to deal with a letdown like that, such a crushing letdown. And so I think that, the more that we address it, that, there's so many undiagnosed folk that are out there, people who are just scared. I mean, even when the AIDS epidemic was talked about, there are people that were like, what, I'm not going to check myself because I'm scared that I may have AIDS because I've had unprotected sex, a bunch of times. There would be people that would be sick and say, what, I'm not getting a COVID test because if I do have it, I'm too paranoid to know that I have it. And again, when in the height of people, there's so many people that would rather avoid knowing the truth or dealing with certain things or hearing certain things, that they just let things be, and I know a lot of people that even when they get the diagnoses, or God forbid, like with my grandfather, when my grandfather died, and he was 69 years old. He was told he had prostate cancer, my father's father, He was told that he had prostate cancer, and he never told anyone. Didn't even tell my grandmother, his wife.
Yeah.
When he had about a month to live, and he couldn't fake it anymore.
Wow.
I remember calling him, and I'm like, hey, Grandpa, I didn't know anything. I just called him just on a random, and I realized it was God who wanted me. It was the last time I was able to speak to him, and his voice didn't sound the same. I'm like, hey, Grandpa, how's everything? Yeah, I'm not feeling too good, Junie. He would always call me Junie because I was junior. My father was Angelo Maldonado Sr., and I'm junior. He said, Junie, I'm not feeling too good, but I'll be okay, and he was just so stubborn. So I use that and share that because there's so many, he was just so stubborn. He didn't want anyone, he felt like he didn't want to burden anyone. He didn't want to overburden anyone.
Right.
And I think a lot of people that are suffering in different areas, whether it be financially, emotionally, mentally, especially just sticking on the mental end things for the particular moment, you're not a burden. If you're suffering, or if you feel like you're not yourself, and you just notice that, you know certain things, or if you already been diagnosed, or if you're fighting it, please understand that it doesn't make you crazy. You're not, lesser than. There's no one better than you. We're all the same in God's eyes. You know what I mean? You are invaluable. You are important. You're amazing. You're gifted. It takes nothing away. But when you ignore it, and you allow yourself to be embarrassed, unfortunately, this world is a cruel world. There are cruel people out there. But if you suffer, and if you feel like you got something going on, get checked, get evaluated, and it's okay to not be okay. You know what I mean? So, you're not always going to be okay, but surround yourself, like you said earlier, where it's important, surround yourself with people who will love on you, people who will support you, people who will encourage you, people who say, you know what, I understand, and I love you just the way you are. And so to me, if I had that, or I had people that understood mental health, even now it's still a taboo subject in many ways. You know what I mean? People still don't understand things. I can go to a ton of churches right now, or even households, and many of them have relatives who have mental illness that they just think that's who he is, that's who Papo is, that's who Johnny is, and not understanding that there was some other underlining issues. Like, we're going to eventually find that young man that killed all of those kids, we're eventually going to find out that he had some underlining issues. And what you see on social media is, oh, here we go, we're going to use the mental health, and who cares if he had But you know what? Let me tell you something. It breaks my heart. I'm a father. And it breaks my heart, and I can't even fathom the pain that these people are going through that lost children. But at the same time, do we just completely minimize and what if we put more effort into helping people with mental health than focusing on guns, right? Guns are one thing. I think more people suffer with mental health issues or undiagnosed mental health issues, or there are people in the streets that should not be in the streets. Okay, because I can give you a story even about my cousin. People can Google this. It's in the newspapers. Happened about 8 years ago. My cousin Peter's name is Peter Jordan. You guys can Google it. It was a front cover of the Daily News in New York City. Mental illness and paranoid schizophrenia. We were begging the city of New York, please keep him in an institution. He's a danger to society. We love him. But we know what happens. He winds up walking through train cars because he didn't know that it was illegal at the time. I didn't even know that it was illegal. And because as a kid, anyone who's from New York, we walked through the train cars. These two undercover officers approached him. He wasn't able to register that they were cops. They had plain clothes. What did he do? He thought that they were trying to rob him. He has a gun on him. I don't, because again, paranoid schizophrenia, street. He was from the streets and pulls out a gun, tries to shoot. They shot him 7 times, 5 times in the head. They were trying to kill him. There was no question they wanted him dead. I say that to say that, again, they look like heroes. One got grazed. He wound up retiring and full pension, full, the works. And he got grazed and act like he was handicapped. So they milked it. But at the end of the day, I mean, I would have shot the guy dead myself too if I was in his But again, he had mental health issues, bad mental health issues, paranoid
Right.
schizophrenia. He was allowed in the streets. We're more fixated on, and I don't want to make the whole thing about mental health, but I think it's important for people to know that if you do have these issues, and even if you're dealing with this whole loss of recent, we have to understand that if you're dealing with some stuff, you can't minimize it, and also we can't minimize the struggles that other people may have.
Right.
And that's why I attempted suicide, to bring it back, and because
Right.
I just wasn't able to. I didn't know that I had mild depression. I didn't know that I
Right.
had anxiety. I didn't know that, but I did have low self-esteem, and because I wasn't supported, I didn't have a father figure. Remember, Uncle Dave chopped me down, and
Right.
so here I am, this fat kid that's trying to, build himself up and be his own cheerleader.
Right.
But yet I also was still trying to fight all of the negative, the naysayers, you know what I mean, and stuff like that. So yeah, there's so
Right.
much to get into, but I'll let you jump in because I've been sharing,
Right. No, you
a
go.
lot.
What you're saying is absolutely true. And I've had people ask me too about the situation with the. 'Cause I'm here in Texas,
Oh wow.
ask me about this, not just this incident, but the New York subway shooting, the Buffalo, and my thing is to say is that well, there's a couple of things. First of all, we've taken God out of everything.
Of course.
We've taken God out of school. We've taken God out of the government. We've taken God out of, in some cases, we've taken God out of the church. And then you have, what happened with the shutdowns and with COVID. We had a rise in depression and anxiety and people with mental illness. And so you're taking all these this well, on top of that, you got people who just have evil in their hearts. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then we have this perfect storm, and then when something happens, we're all surprised about it. But what are we doing to stop any of this? Like like we're talking about the mental health. That's the cases for mental health is skyrocketed. We're talking about gun control. It's not, to me, Cain killed Abel with a rock. You know what I mean? It's nothing to do with the gun control. Like, a gun never shot anybody by itself. It's a person who pulled the trigger.
I like what you said there, because it really is true. Because again, when you don't have mental stability and you're not in a good space, again, it's gonna start to unfold where that people are gonna find out that this young man had issues, and there's been other issues where these horrible, horrific things took place. And anytime someone would reveal, like, hey, this person had these issues, and it just, it ballooned into this, the volcano finally erupted. Nobody wants to, we just want to talk about, everything gets politicized, then we have the Democrats and the Republicans, and everybody's trying to use this opportunity to advance their own agendas and things of that nature. But again, the crux of it all is, again, and this is for anyone who's watching, besides the stuff you see on the television, think about it. You may have loved ones that have mental health issues.
Right.
How are you helping them? How are you supporting them? Have you researched what they're dealing with? If you're struggling, have you researched? Have you done your due diligence to be able to understand and really grasp the struggle? You may be married to someone who battles with. Again, whatever the scenario may be, I think that I would dare say that 8 out of 10 people in this world battle with some form of mental health issue. Okay, you may have anxiety, mental health.
Right.
You may have depression. A lot of people say they're depressed. They've never been diagnosed. And again, mental health. There's a lot. There's a bunch of
Right.
Amber Heard. This
Right.
famous trial that's going on right now that just concluded, and then now they're going to decide. She was diagnosed with a bunch of different diagnoses. Now, I do believe she has a personality disorder. That's for sure,
Right.
because it's been pretty evident with the things that that we've seen and the testimonies and things of that nature. So, PTSD, I wouldn't say I don't agree with, because I have a child that has it, and so I've done research on it. So just from
Right.
my vantage point and from what I've heard, I don't believe that at all. That's just her way of kind of backing up, and not to get too much into that, but again, these are examples of people who, you know, they have these issues, but they're not addressing them. Because then there are people who have
Right.
mental illness, and they're not really dealing with it. Like I said, they just, okay, I have
Right.
it, I acknowledge it, but then what? You know what I mean? And
Right.
then so now everyone around you is suffering. You
Right.
know. So again, if you have it, please research, get the proper help. Don't feel alone. Don't be embarrassed. But if you also know someone else that has it, like support them, pray for them,
Right.
like encourage them, love on them, check on them all the time. Don't shy away from them. Don't like really read. Like, and I said to my stepmother once, and I said to her, I said, I really wish that you would have done more research, about what my dad was dealing with, because he loved you. He trusted you with,
Right.
with everything. You were living with
Right.
him, and I wish that you would have done more to research what he was going through, because you knew more. You knew before anyone else did, and,
Right.
and you could have done your part to really understand him, instead of calling me up all the time. Your dad's doing this, and he's driving me crazy, and I'm like, but didn't you tell me that he had this? Didn't you send me paperwork that he had bipolar disease, and he had this, and he had that? And so I'm saying to myself, like, if you're watching this, please do your due diligence. If you have a loved one, research. Do what you can to help them, support them. Make sure they get the proper help if you have it. Because I'm telling you, no matter what, it doesn't stop you from fulfilling your dreams or doing what you're called to do. Don't
Right.
look at it. Don't be embarrassed about it. But again, if you don't do your part, we'll see situations like this take place. If
Right.
you see something and it looks a little off, don't ignore it and just get consumed with your own life and your own checkbox. I got to check this off. This is what I got to do, and get into your daily routines. There are people that are suffering. And if you're seeing something or experiencing something and you're not doing anything about it, you can't complain about it afterwards, because I think it's hypocritical. That's just my take.
Right.
I don't mean
I
no
agree with that.
disrespect to anybody. I'm just being straightforward and honest.
No, I agree with that. Hey, one of the things that I always end my show with is, I remind people that you're uniquely designed with a purpose. Every last one of us has a purpose in life. God created you for a reason. So, for us to look at other people because they have mental illness and think that they're less of a person, or someone who might be struggling with mental illness and look at themselves as less of a person, they have to understand that in order for you to fulfill your purpose, if you have things that are hindering you from being able to do that, maybe whatever you're suffering from, depression or anxiety or whatever the case may be,
Right.
You for yourself, you want to get that help. You want to get that help because you are important. You were created for a reason.
That's right.
In order for you to fulfill that reason, you got to do something to help yourself with that. And then, like you said too, sometimes people don't understand what they're going through. They may not click in their head that they're struggling from anxiety or from depression. So it's up to the people around them, the people that love them, to be able to step up and say, hey, look, I want to do whatever I can to help you come to grips with that, and then get the help that you need. So I agree. I mean, it's become more prevalent now,
Yep.
I think, than ever, and I think we need to be finding ways to deal with it.
And
not only for ourselves, but for other people.
You're 100% right, and I think that's one of the reasons why I became an act. Well, not one of the reasons. It's the reason I became an actor. When my dad took his life in 2017, it was traumatizing. I mean, to say the least. I was out there 3 weeks before he took his life. I flew
Mm.
out there and something, and I realized now it was God.
Right.
3 weeks before he took his life, I had pleaded with my brother. I said, "I'll
Mm.
pay you for the flights and everything, rentals and everything. We got to go to Fort Lauderdale because that's where my dad was living at the time. He lost his house, he lost everything, he lost his driver's license, he had DWIs and DUIs, or whatever it was.
Right.
And my stepmother was kind of using that as a weapon against him, which was really because she needed him for so many years, and he always was the provider, and so her way of getting back at him was not taking him places. And my dad was very independent. He's
Right.
just a New Yorker that did everything and just by himself. He was so when
Right.
she knew the way to get to him was like if he wanted to get cigarettes, she said, "Oh well, you know what? You're gonna talk to me nasty. I'm not taking you." And so my dad started to
Right.
get full. And again, when you have bipolar disease and you have PTSD and depression, you have all of these things. It starts to once the depression really becomes really prevalent and it starts to consume you, it
Right.
takes you further and further, and then eventually, suicidal thoughts and things of that nature. So she contributed,
Mm.
in ways that I don't think she really fully was able to grasp, and I don't think she ever really thought that he would commit to doing it.
Right.
And so
Right.
it was something that I had to get off my chest, and I don't think she really took it well, but you know,
Yeah.
I had to speak my truth in love, right? But the point that
Right.
I'm making was 3 weeks before he took his life, I realized now that God allowed me to have that time with him. And I had, and because something told me, it was like, I knew that I had to bring my brother. There was no doubt about
Okay.
it. Like so when we went out there, I begged him and pleaded with him. I said, "Dad, please move in with me in Pennsylvania. Come move in with me. I'll take care of you. You can live with us. You don't got to worry about nothing. I'll take you. I was gonna go all out for my dad, whatever he needed to make
Right.
sure." And all of a sudden, my brother decides he didn't want to get involved in anything else. I went to all his doctors, checked out everybody that he was seeing. I wanted to see what was going on. And I'm pleading with him. I'm like, "Dad, you got your granddaughters, and I'm using my two kids, his two only grandchildren. Come on, Dad. Do for the grand. If you don't do it for me, do it for the grandkids." And then all of a
Right.
sudden, all my brother had to do was say, "Hey, if Dad doesn't want to do it, leave him alone. Don't pressure him."
Wow.
And then all of a sudden, my father said, "You know what? Yeah, I'm not gonna go. Paul's right. I'm staying." And that was it. 3 weeks later, I get the call.
Wow.
Your father's dead. And I'm like, so in in the mid 2018, I remember crying out to the Lord. I'm like, "Lord, what am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to
Right.
get from all of this? Like, what am I supposed to get, man? My dad killed himself. What am I supposed to get? He was 60 years old." And
Right.
that's when the Lord put in my heart. He says, "I want you to carry on his legacy."
Mm.
And I said, "Okay." And then I had to pause because I'm like, well, I know he ain't mean to be a Marine. I'm too old and too heavy.
Right.
I ain't gonna be no
Right.
Marine. That's for
Right.
sure. I won't make it through the half a day of boot camp. So
Right.
I say it joking, but then I realized he said, "No, I want you to become an actor."
Wow.
And so I'm like, wow. So here I am in my 40s,
Mm.
complete. I was doing ministry. I was in full time ministry for about 10 years. I ran a ministry called Takeover Ministries. It was just to work with youth and young adults that were in
Right.
gangs, and I organized Christian hip hop concerts. And I was kind of, I'm not kind of, I was the Pennsylvania, the Lehigh Valley, the Pennsylvania Christian hip hop plug. Like I was the guy that
Right.
everybody reached out to when they wanted to add Pennsylvania to their tour spot. Like that destination they reached out. I mean, I had everybody out. Bizzle, I had all these Christian
Right.
rappers, Dayton, and all these other individuals. I mean, this too many to name. Ruslan, he has
Right.
a big podcast now, Ruslan, huge podcast. He's got a couple 100,000 followers and things. So I got all these people, and so I was doing that for about 10 years. But I was putting my own money in. I wasn't charging anything. Everything was
Right.
free. The last event I had no malice from the group, the Clips, and Pharrell signed them. Pharrell signed them. Everybody knows who Pharrell is. So, I had them spent maybe 13, 14,000 on that event. Didn't charge anything. Didn't take an offering. I was always about helping people. So when
Right.
my dad passed, the last concert I did was 3 months after he passed. I realized, I said, you know what? When God told me, hey, you got to carry on his legacy, I'm like, okay. But then again, being an actor is really tough,
Right.
because it's you got it now. I'm in a new career. I got
Right.
to learn how this works. You got to start rubbing elbows and meeting people and networking and taking classes, and it's like starting all over again.
Right.
And but I did have a lot of weapons where I was able to sing, I was able to rap. I'm also a professional comedian. I've
Right.
studied improv, so I had all of these things. I'm used to performing in front of people, so it was just like, it was almost like it was already laid out for me, and I didn't even realize it, right? And
Right.
so, with that being said, I went on full force and got cast to be in Danny's House, which is you could see it pretty much everywhere. But Vice, it was initially Viceland,
Right.
which it's seen globally. And then they switched it up to Vice TV, and then you could see it on Hulu, you could see it on Amazon Prime, you could see it on YouTube. It's all over the place.
Right.
But if you're a believer, I probably wouldn't suggest you watch it. I didn't do anything on my end to compromise, but the show is some topics are a little much. So, watch with your
Right.
discretion. But again, it was I was a series regular, and this is 3 weeks after I decided to become an actor. You
Wow.
know, and then I started getting into other films. I've been in films with. I can't even begin to tell you. I would encourage people to go on IMDb and put Angelo Maldonado Jr. Check out my IMDb. Like my Instagram is Laro55. People can see all the things. I've sang with Patti LaBelle.
Oh
I
wow.
performed with, so many different people. The list goes on and on. But it's like, but I realized at the end of the day that when it pertained to acting, that I had to carry on this legacy. Now it's been 4 years now I've been an actor, but it didn't. It's not sustaining me and my family. It's so now
Yeah.
I'm in a position where after 4 years, and I was just scraping by, because I've realized that I've got my SAG after card. I'm in SAG. It gets
Right.
$3,000 to get that. So that was something that I wanted to do. I started my own film company called Mind State Films
Hmm.
LLC. I didn't get a chance to make a film yet. Even though I have something written, I just don't have the finances to do it. But this particular film I've been trying to do for 3.5 years since I started acting. It's called Don't Mind Me. It's
Hmm.
basically a short film that's going to be made into a series or a full length feature film. I already have
Right.
people interested in Netflix and HBO. And my agent is also a literary agent, which basically she brings it to these platforms and said, "Hey, we got something here."
Right.
So yeah, with the acting, it was like, hey, and then I started this Mind State Films. It's the only film company of its kind that will
Hmm.
make films primarily. Every film is going to be about mental health and mental illness and ending the stigma. So,
Wow.
the only film company in the world that every film will have something but again, it'll be comedy, there'll be all types of films. Everyone will watch it.
Right.
But again, it'll, somehow, some way, there's a character or something in the film is going to talk about the subject and offer encouragement and inspiration, and people are going to be able to identify. So, yeah. So that's why I got into acting, and I started my own film company, and this is why I do what I do. And it became a passion, piece. But it's hard. Like, I'm not gonna lie to you. Right now, I don't even know how I'm gonna pay the end of at the end of the month, how I'm gonna pay my rent. Like, we
Right.
go through those moments where you know we have bills, and now I'm like, man, I got to go to work and work a full time, and then do the acting part time, and all this stuff that's going on, and it's overwhelming.
Right.
And that's the thing where you have to trust God, because God is, my pastor said, no, this is what you're called to do. I believe
Right.
it. I've gotten confirmation. I know that this is my calling. I'm not giving up on it. But again, it's tough. It's tough, because you really, if you know you're called to do something, you're not always going to have everything lined up for you.
Right.
You really have to say, okay, you know what, God, I don't know how this is going to happen, but okay, if you need me to work for a while or whatever's going to happen. And my pastor said, you know what, I believe that by you committing to that, God's going to open up a door, and you're going to be able to, it may even be right away, but God wants you to commit. I'm like, God, you know what, whatever you want me to do, I'll do whatever I got to do. Because the acting, if you want me to stop today, God, I'll stop acting.
Right.
Because the goal is never to do what I want to do. It's always to do what you've called me to do.
Right.
At the end of the day. And that, to me, like I said, if you don't feel called to do something, you will never really, really be happy at what you do. You'll just be doing something to do it.
Right.
So, again, I say all that to say that being an actor is a blessing. It's not easy, but I'm called. And even though I don't have all the answers,
Right.
I've turned down hundreds for 4 years. Maybe I'm exaggerating. I say at least 60 to 70 different films that had profanity in it, because I just didn't want to compromise. Like, so
Right.
here I am trying to do what I got to do, but also be honorable to the Lord and to what He called me to do, because I am a proud believer, and
Right.
and I'm not going to compromise and do anything that would compromise that. But again, it takes a lot of faith. It takes a lot of trusting in God. I've cried a lot. I've went through a lot of doubts,
Right.
wondering. But again, if you know you're called to do something, no matter how hard it is, make sure that you are centered. You have the right support system around you. And even if you feel like you don't, I offer myself. Reach out to me. I will do the best that I can to support you. And again, I'm not God. God should be number one. And I always encourage people, run to God first. But if you need someone to talk to, I may not have arrived in all these areas, but maybe I'm a couple of steps ahead, of where you're trying to get. And you know what? I'll lock arms with you, man. And I'll do what I can to get you to the step where I'm at. And we'll just we'll fight this battle together, because that's what we're supposed to do.
Exactly. And what I'll do for the show is we'll put links to different ways that they can link up with you, see some of the stuff that that you've worked on, and then ways that they can actually contact you and get advice, or if they're struggling with something, with the mental health issue, and they want to just talk to you about that, we'll have a way for them to
For sure
to connect with you. So you've given us a lot of good advice for people who are trying to break into this. What else? One of the things I was thinking of when you were saying that is, the whole industry right now is kind of changing with the as far as actual TV and movies. Everything's being streamed online now, and with YouTube being as big as it is, I kind of feel like that the whole industry is kind of evolving and changing, and more people are having are gaining the opportunity to be able to do show like I'm doing a show right now. We're able to get out there and do reach more people, and I think the platform's kind of changing. And with that, I think that part of what would help people like yourself that's looking for to get your film company up is just networking. We get together and we all put our resources together. I think that we can make things happen. As you were telling me about the things that you're doing, I have people in mind that I want to connect you with, that I think would also help you. And that's part of we're doing some construction on the show. We'll call it. So basically, we're going to add some new features, and one of the things, and I'll just give a preview. We're going to add a website, and one of the things I want to do with the website is to be able to bring people in on the show, and then create a network where we can have everybody's links and their information, so that not only my audience but my guests can connect with each other,
Right.
and share resources. So I think that's really important. It's one of the things I'm actually looking forward to, is to be able to connect people. So, with some of the things that you're looking at and what you're talking about, I already have somebody in mind I want to I'll talk to you off camera on to connect you with. But
Yeah, and I appreciate that, and one of the things I realized, that there are people who have the ability to make, to connect some dots, but then there are those who kind of keep their connections to themselves. Some people, because again, it's hard to. Sometimes it's scary to co-sign someone if because nowadays people, they kind of, if you're putting your stamp on something, you got to be really sure. And so sometimes, it's that fear of like, oh man, you know what I mean? Like, and then there's some people that are just stingy and I don't want to, connect them with this person. But for me, networking is very important, and I do a lot of that. I know a lot of people, and I'm not boasting in any which way. I know a lot of celebrities. I know a lot of famous people, rich people. I know a lot of, there's so many people that I can, just rattle off, and I'm not going to do that. But I've never felt compelled to reach out to them for help. I believe that God is going to make everything very, very crystal clear on how it's going to happen. And again, I'm not saying it to sound like real religious and churchy. I'm just speaking, my heart and being real, because I believe that even in the church, even in those who claim to be believers, there's a lot of people that, that their agendas don't line up with mine. I know some people that claim to be Christians that are into the film industry and things of that nature, but there's a lot of how do I say, fabricated, a lot of fabrication. And it's just like testimonies. Like if you go to church, you ever heard somebody tell a testimony about what they went through in life, and then you find out that they were full of crap, and they didn't go through any of it, and they're like, yeah, man, I was in the streets, man, I was shooting me, I was in the Bloods, man, and I'm shooting. And then you find out, come on, man, you just added a whole lot of fluff to that. So unfortunately, with me being around the business in the music industry, being a former manager, even concert promoter, just being around the business, it's very, very tough, to really connect and build with just anyone, because there are a lot of people who don't really live the life that they claim to live. And so for me, and I'll just say this, and I really won't say too much more, because I want to be, I'm not sure how long the show is, but I will say that, when, for those who aspire to be an actor, if there's anyone that's watching, or anyone that is curious about being an actor or understanding, it's a lot more than just resources and connections. Because like I said, right now, if I were to show you my contact list, you're like, wow, and that means absolutely nothing sometimes, in many cases, because there are people out there that ultimately will get offended. They may not feel uncomfortable. They may feel uncomfortable that you're asking them for something. So if you do believe in God in any capacity, I highly suggest that you just focus on making sure that God is number one in all you do. And again, it sounds real churchy and Christianese. I really don't care. That's just my life. I've learned to say, you know what? After 3.5 years of me trying to get this project done, it still hasn't come to fruition, because God's timing is always perfection. And I really encourage people, to even like if you aspire to do something, make sure that you actually are gifted to do something, because again, we all would love to do a lot of things that we see other people do, but
Right.
don't set yourself up for failure. There's nothing wrong with wanting to do something, but again, we may not be called to do certain things. You know what I mean? You ever seen
Right.
someone and you just like, man, like even like, I'll end with this, like, even like American Idol, you know,
Right.
you ever see they'll make maybe poke fun as they edit and in the editing board of people who come in and they'll sing and you're like, oh my God, what is this person doing?
Right.
And
Right.
and again, these individuals may have been told by their mother or father, my God, you're amazing, and then
Right.
they're not. And so if really, really, really take a second to just do an inventory of your
Right.
life and say, man, am I really, really called to do these things? And if you know that you're not, or if you realize that it's just not, you just kind of want to do that, I would really say, like, really evaluate yourself and just allow God to lead you, because I tell you, it is the worst thing in the world to be pumped up and told that you can do something and that you're great at something, and all you were surrounded by yes men and yes women and people who
Right.
really didn't tell you the truth because they didn't love you that much. They
Right.
thought that they'd hurt your feelings, or no. I remember telling one person, they asked me, what did you think about this rap song? And it was this guy named Joe Nathan. And this gentleman started to bash me afterwards. I remember he came up to me one day and he said to me, hey, I have a song I want you to hear. And I said, listen, please, don't, I want you to know, I'm going to be honest. I'm not going to be
Right.
nasty, but I'm going to be very honest. And, you're okay with that. He said to me, yeah, man, come on, man. You know me. So what happens? I listened to the song and it was really, 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 really bad. Really
Right.
bad. Right.
Right.
And I told him the honest truth. And I heard other songs and I said, you know what? I said, listen, man, I love you, bro. And I
Right.
say this for a reason, and I'm ending with this. I said, I love you, bro, but I don't think this is it, man. It wasn't even
Right.
like he wasn't good. It was just it was just really, 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 really bad. And I
Right.
wasn't like, he even referenced me one time. This guy, Laro, my nickname is Laro. This guy, Laro, thinks he's the Christian Suge Knight, and he thinks that he knows it all. And so he he even tried to attribute me to his depression and try to, he bashed me in the Christian community, anybody who would listen.
Wow.
And I said to myself, one day I'm going to like share the truth about that. And this is that time where I'm like, you know what? You asked me for my opinion based upon my experience and everything. Right. And when I said it in love, that, hey, I really don't think this is what, you're called to do, but pray about it. Let God lead you. It's this ain't it. He blocked me and bashed me for years. And to this day, he's still talking about me. And I'm like, wow. But again, this is where, again, if you can't take criticism, even if it's not said by the right individuals, you have to be really mindful of whatever career, especially if it's an entertainment business. You got to accept it, because not everyone is hating. Right. I don't have a reason to hate on the guy. Why do I need to hate on the guy? I'm already doing what I'm doing. So, but again, a lot of people, not everyone is hating, and you can't chalk it up all they're haters. There are people who are just really honest, and they're and so if my opinion meant that much to you, if it didn't mean anything to you, or then why ask for it? And then when I give it to you, so if you're in the business, and I'll just say this, be mindful that if you do ask for advice, and these are people that you respect, honor what they feel. And again, that doesn't mean that they are the definitive answer. God's the ultimate say.
Right.
But also be humble enough to accept the fact that not everybody's going to think you're amazing. Not everybody's going to think you're talented. Not everybody's going to like your music. Not everyone's going to think you're a great actor. Not everyone's going to think you're a great person.
Right.
But if you can't accept that, then you're definitely doing the wrong thing. So anyway,
I think you brought two points. First of all, when God's giving you a purpose, I think you'll know what that purpose is. There'll be no question too.
Sure.
When God's giving you showed you what your purpose is, there's no question to that. If you're on the line and you're trying to figure out, and somebody gives you advice, that's one thing. But I think that when you know your purpose, you know your purpose. The second thing that you mentioned too, I think is extremely important, is we always want everything on our time.
Mm-hmm.
Everything has to be, we set these goals and we're like, by this time I want to be do this, this, and this, and we don't realize everything is God's timing. You're not going to ever speed anything up. You're not going to slow anything down. Anything that's going to happen that's, to put you, to make you successful with your purpose, and put you in the positions that you need to, it's all going to happen through God's timing.
100%. And because again, if you really want God to be a part of whatever you're doing, you have to realize that whatever it is that you feel that you're gifted to do is really, it's like rent a center. You know what I mean? He's loaned you some things, but it's ultimately it's his, unless you intend to, to buy it and buy it in reference to God. It's like claiming like you're the one doing it all, and you know what? You're not. You're just a vessel. But when you say, God, listen, whatever it is that I may want to do right now, and this is what I've said to God many times, I will stop immediately. You want me to go mop floors in Chick-fil-A, and I'm not knocking anyone who's maintenance at Chick-fil-A or working at Chick-fil-A. I love Chick-fil-A, obviously. It's pretty clear that I like Chick-fil-A. But again, I was like, Lord, if you wanted me to clean toilet bowls, right? And just do that, like every day for 5 days, 6 days a week, all I do is clean toilet bowls or, stuff like that. I will do it with a smile. Why? And you said, and if you wanted me to stop acting, I would stop. Why? And I mean that. This is before God. I'm in the car with my wife and my 11-year-old in the back. I mean, before God, I said to him, I said, Lord, whatever it is, I will do what you want me to do. Why? Because I know my life will be blessed. No matter what. So my goal isn't to be famous, isn't to be rich. If your goal is to be rich and famous and all that other stuff, I can't knock you for it, to each his own. But if you do love God, or if there's an ounce of spirituality in your life, and you really, really are trying to do the right thing, because I don't know, who's going to be watching this. There's going to be some who may be Christians, some who are not, whatever the case may be. But if you are Christian, remember that your goal should always be to please God first. And if you have that in mind, there is nothing that can stop you, regardless of being at peace. And your goal should never be about being rich or famous. Your goal should be, how can I please God? Because I know that everything else, what's more important, being rich and miserable, or I'd rather be poor and at peace and knowing that my bills are paid and that's it, and I don't have much to do. I can't take my kids to get Chinese food, I may not have HBO and all these other cable channels, maybe I may not have cable, whatever. But if I'm in a good space mentally, emotionally, my kids feel loved, they're doing what they're called to do, and there's a healthy environment, then I am ultimately rich. I'm a millionaire. I am famous in that regards, because again, it may sound generic, but I said, Lord, I will do. And that's the reason why I believe God will, and he has opened up doors.
Well, thank you. You brought a lot of, good information, and just hearing your story was really inspiring. You know, I feel like I got to know a lot more about you, and then, like I said, you just hearing your story, just that's incredible where you started and kind of where you're at now, and then the whole, the whole issue we have to deal with mental illness, and bringing that to light, especially now because it is mental health awareness month. I wanted to thank you for bringing that up and sharing that information with us.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I think it's important, to mention, and I'm just I'm glad, and like I said, I'm honored to be on here, and thank you for considering me.
Right, and I thank you for being on. I mean, coming on, and I tell my guests all the time that I get as much out of this as anybody. I love bringing people in, and then hearing their journeys, because it inspires me just the same as it does everybody else. Right. Just hearing what people's gone through and how they're able to overcome and be successful. That's just inspiring. That inspires me just as much as it does my audience. So, again, thank you for coming on the show and sharing your journey.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. I mean, I sound like a Chick-fil-A employee already. But
right.
Again, it's an honor, and I'm really grateful, and I just pray that God continues to use this platform to reach people, and whoever's watching, like I said, whatever you get from this, I just hope and pray that you don't forget it. Hope it's something that's just branded in your brain, in your spirit, your heart, and just realize that, no matter whatever you're trying to achieve, you can achieve a lot in life, but the main thing is it what God wants you to do? Is it something that you're called to do? And regardless of who you feel supports you or not, there are people that will love on you and encourage you, and this is why I put myself out there and say, you know what, if you say you don't have anyone, you're lying, because you got this guy right here saying, you know what, I got your back, and that's what I needed to share. And so thank you guys, and it's been a pleasure, man. I'm trying to pull into this little driveway to get my daughter, and I'm hearing some kids scream, and I'm like making sure, like, where's that coming from?
Right.
But yeah, man, it's forgive the just in the car running around trying to multitask. The whole time. I mean, I had to meet my mom at McDonald's, and she went to get my wife and my daughter some food and stuff like that, and so I didn't even talk to my mom. My mom was like waving at me. I'm like, Mom, I'm busy. So we're multitasking, but it really was an honor. It really was an honor. So I'm grateful, and I pray for the best, man. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. All right, guys. So this was really special for me, and to be able to interview Angelo and hear his story. So, and then again, if you guys want to reach out to him, we're going to give you guys a link, and then you'll be able to learn more about some of the stuff he's doing, some of the work he's already done, and then if you want to reach out and get advice from him, or just share your story with him, we'll give that information to you. So if you while you're watching this, before I end, just make sure that if you want to see more of the shows that we're doing, just hit the subscribe button, hit like, and share and comment. We want to hear from you, and know what you're getting out of this as well. So until next time, remember, you are uniquely designed with the purpose, and always keep moving forward.